Welcome. I am William Snyder, curator at the Eisenhower Presidential Library, Museum, and Boyhood Home in Abilene, Kansas. Today we are going to give you a little insight into our newest temporary exhibit titled Forbidden Art. But a question to consider before we begin this tour: what is art? Under ordinary circumstances, this question may have a relatively clear answer. But when you are talking about pieces created in a concentration camp, where almost every item used to actually create the art was stolen, and the fact that creating the art itself was illegal, well, this changes everything. The works of art created in a concentration camp are as much a sign of resistance and the will to survive as they are testimonies of terror and documentation of the daily horror. The majority of the works on display were created at the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. The Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum of Poland, which preserves both the camp and its artifacts, holds about 2,000 works of art by concentration camp prisoners. Portraits and reflections of their reality captured in a sketch, and even small artisan objects of everyday utility. This so-called memoir from Buchenwald documents cultural life behind the barbed wire. Several copies were made in hopes of at least one surviving. The edges of the album are bound in human skin, which was intended as a testimony to the crimes committed by the Nazis in the camps. This particular piece, titled Our Biographies, is done on a piece of wrapping paper. It presents images of prisoners that are in fact their own fingerprints. In this simple yet symbolic way, the artist emphasizes the individuality of each person, something that not even the Nazi concentration camp could destroy. Another artist created a series of sketches depicting life in Auschwitz, including this piece, showing the prisoners being carried back from labor on their fellow prisoners' backs. Camp regulations required all prisoners to return after their labor shift. If they were too tired, ill, or even dead, they would be carried back to camp by fellow prisoners to be accounted for after the shift. This is one of 114 portraits made in various concentration camps by one particular trained artist that have been preserved at the Auschwitz Museum. Almost all of the images include the camp number in the prisoner portraits. This is an exceptional album of caricatures depicting SS men and prisoners that was created by an artist-prisoner who worked in the photo studio used by the Gestapo Identification Service. The album was discovered in one of the rooms in Block 26 where the studio was located. These caricatures exemplify another coping mechanism, a kind of self-defense reaction against the surrounding world, and perhaps even a bit of humor. The artist died of typhus fever in October 1942 at the camp. Among some of the earlier pieces created are the works of one particular artist depicting prisoners both at work and at so-called regulation rest periods. The drawings were created on scraps of paper, even cigarette wrappers. Only about 20 of his works have been preserved. The drawings were carried out by the artist, taped under his arm with adhesive bandage. Even though these works are placed in the category of pieces depicting the camp reality, the artist is quoted as saying, "My drawings do not render the horror of the camp." This double self-portrait is an example of another coping mechanism through the expression of art. In a question written by the artist in the bottom corner of the piece, "Who is it?" is answered with, "You? Me? Yes." We can see the artist was trying to come to grips with his imprisonment. At the forefront is the figure dressed in concentration camp stripes, with a camp number and shaved head pointing to himself. And just behind his back is a nicely groomed, well-dressed figure representing the artist before his arrest. Yet one more example of the prisoners trying to cope with their reality and maintain some piece of who they are before the atrocity. There are very few portraits of women from the camps, making the dozen or so portraits by a female prisoner seem so precious. In this sketch, titled Portrait of a Camp Friend, Wanda, you can still see the hope in her eyes. This sketch, titled Women with Wheelbarrows, was created by a female prisoner at a camp near Auschwitz that was designated exclusively for women. The artist stated, "All in all, I made about 500 drawings, but they were either buried in a forest and never found, or partially captured by the camp authorities and subsequently burnt. In that way, all of my work from the camp period was thoroughly destroyed." This drawing, however, was found in 1975, sealed in a glass jar that had been buried at the camp. We are proud to be the first site to present these 3D scans of the exhibit artifacts, created in lead crystal. This little sculpture was found after the war on the grounds of the camp. It is not known who the sculptor was. Although the head of the figure has survived only partially, the sculpture has not lost anything from its character. Carved with primitive tools in accidentally acquired materials, it appeals to us by its imperfection of form and simplicity of workmanship. This merely 12-centimeter long sarcophagus was found in the ground at the Auschwitz-Birkenau site a year after the war ended. Inside there was a partially burnt human bone. On the one side of the sarcophagus one can see the dates of birth and death, which allows us to recognize the age of a deceased person, only 25 years old. This tiny object is a moving symbol of a camp prisoner's attempt to maintain the dignity of human death. Thank you for viewing our online video tour of Forbidden Art. Forbidden Art is a traveling exhibit on loan courtesy of the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum of Poland and the Polish mission of the Orchard Lake Schools in Orchard Lake, Michigan. It is the first exhibition created by the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum for an American audience, and through the work of the Polish mission, it has been displayed at prominent institutions from Los Angeles to New York City. This exhibit is located in the library building through Labor Day 2014. The Eisenhower Presidential Library, Museum, and Boyhood Home is located in Abilene, Kansas, right off of Interstate 70 at exit 275. We are open 362 days a year. Connect with us at Ike Library on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, YouTube.